Karrasch. Shawna Karrasch here with another Ask Shawna answer coming to you from Villanova. All right, this question is from Nicole. She first sent the question, and she's coming from Germany. She first sent the question, and then she pulled it. So I read the question. I was like, oh, this is great. This is a really good topic and one that is actually near and dear to my heart. And I didn't study it. I just observed it and started thinking, wait, what is happening here? So it was really, I was super excited. Then she said, wait, I want to adjust it. And I thought, hurry. And so now it's back. It only took a day. So I'm going to read her basic question. She goes into a lot of principles and things behind it and research, which I quite like, and quoting some people that are very big with behavioral analysis and studying and doing the research that are great with helping people to be better with the animals. So I'm going to read the basic question, but my hope, Nicole, is that I touch on those other things through addressing those questions and having kind of some stories. They're not stories, they're anecdotal situations that I've gone through where I've used it cognitively, me thinking about it and what I was going to do. So hopefully I address a lot of your questions. So here we go. Okay, she says, my basic question is still the same. I'd like to ask for some clarification about counterconditioning. I just add another behavior expert's pronouncement to the list. When you say, this is me, so I couldn't just sit there and go, work on your attitude, which I can hear me saying that. I'm sure I've said it a lot. I needed to work on things where I could address the attitude. Yes, and that is, and I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you the most recent one of that. Yes, so I'll address that more. Jose Rosales Ruiz, who's amazing, who reports on the insight by Lindsay Wood Brown that confirms to his own observation, namely that people who are successful with counter conditioning, which is a special form of classic respondent conditioning, right? Classic to respondent positioning. Well, counter conditioning, I'll get more into that. Actually practices operant instrumental conditioning, whether they are aware of it or not. And Susan Friedman then says, who promotes operationalization, for which she coined the slogan, unlabel me. Right. Okay. And so this is excellent. And then she goes and says, from my own experience, I'm quite sure that the experts are right. Nevertheless, the matter does call for an explanation because it seems like a solid contradiction that might puzzle many people. So anyway, trying to sort it out. I'm very much your practical person teaching a lot of times people who don't know, because, 27 years ago, nobody knew what positive reinforcement was. They didn't know what the science was. They didn't. And yeah, I knew I could get them to start practicing the science without the science words. I knew I could get the concepts to get across to them, and they go, oh yeah, that makes sense to me. I can do that. And that was good enough for me. Now that we've gotten, it's 27 years later, we're really going way beyond that. And it's awesome to have people, to have the groups we have, to have the research going on that people know about, because it'll go along in these vacuums somewhere. But now it's really kind of come to light in the horse world, in the animal world, and it's very exciting. So I love all that. And okay, so let's get started. Operant conditioning is basically how I like to explain it, is the learner is learning to operate on their environment. So they're learning, if I do this, I get that. If I do this, I get that. These are simplified terms because that's kind of where I go. So because I teach laymen mostly. So they learn to operate on their environment. They learn this, if I do this, I get this. Whether it's something they want, something they don't want, they start learning about the consequences related to their actions. So that's the operant conditioning. And then classic conditioning, and I'm going to even tell you, when I wrote my book, it was for people who didn't know, I was a marine mammal trainer, really, is what I was, who had just started working with horses. And so I came at it from a marine mammal trainer's perspective. And so I did not realize how little people thought about the emotional state of the horse. Now, even keep in mind, back then, we couldn't even say, like in our records that we wrote at SeaWorld or with the marine mammals, you couldn't even say emotions. You couldn't say he was happy. You couldn't say he was confused. You couldn't say he was this, he was that. You couldn't. It was because science still hadn't, said that they're sentient beings. And so, in a broad sense. So we would have to say he seemed this way and he seemed that way. But I always recognized that, and it was really kind of unsaid almost, but I recognized if they didn't like what they were doing, they wouldn't do it. Because they get all their food each and every day, regardless what they do or don't do. They get all their social interactions every day, regardless what they do or don't do. So the challenge was, how do I make this fun and engaging? But it can't be all about the food because they get that anyway. So that is addressing to a certain point, having to make sure it was fun. And that to me, in a rudimentary sense, really, was I had to kind of consider that their emotions mattered. I needed them to pop up and be happy to see me and like, yay, what are we going to do today? Be intrigued, to like the puzzle, to like the game. So that's what I thought about. I didn't really think deeper than that, though. I just knew kind of subconsciously that I needed, in order to raise criteria to a very high level, I had to make sure that they enjoyed it or else I couldn't get there. So I didn't even think of this consciously. That's just what I knew inside. So the focus really was on the operant conditioning. How do I get a backflip trained? How do I get a fast swim trained? How do I get teeth drilling changed or trained? How do I get holding for, hearing threshold study? So it was all about teaching these things and how do we get these things, but we couldn't get these things unless they liked what they did, because we did not work with hungry animals. That can lead to frustration, which can lead to aggression, and nobody wants that. So that's how I moved into the horse world. And so I wrote my first book, and I'm working on another one now, but it'll be a while before it's out, just because that's how the publishing organization goes. But as I wrote the book, I kind of was busy thinking, this is how you get them in the trailer. This is how you get, cantered apart. This is how you get this. This is how you get that. This is how you get this. And then what I realized, it took me a little bit to really put this together. All people saw was to see it as a means to an end. And to me, that's not the biggest part. That's not the best part. But I will tell you that the horses are the ones who really brought it to light for me, because the horses would come in with experiences that were very different. There was a lot of horses coming in that were worried about the world, were spooky, were scared, were, fighting. They could be combative in a way. So I didn't see these marine mammals that all had this very even, kind, free to choose upbringing. I saw very different learners. And so I started realizing, okay, well, I need to even these things out. So whenever I see an animal today, so when I see a horse come in, I think, okay, this is my line that I like most of them to be in. This kind of this little realm is where I feel like they're most balanced. But if I have them way up here and they are just wah and ready to run and they have energy that's all over the place and they can't direct it, they can't put it anywhere, I'm going to work on bringing that one down. And relaxation, softening, relaxation, softening, downward transitions and things that kind of bring them to a place. And I'm building confidence through that process. So I'm looking for them to become more confident, and to bring them down so they're more, I can get them in this range where they can think, they can slow down and think, and they're not just busy reacting to the world. Other ones can be shut down or completely unmotivated, and I'm trying to bring their energy up, their drive up, their motivation up. So I'm trying to get this kind of bandwidth in here where I want them all to be. So now that's not addressing, that's kind of shaping an attitude is almost what I feel like. It's a work ethic, if you will. I want to get them to a place where they're engaged in the training. And if they're too worried, they're not engaged in the training, they don't see the value in it, they can't slow down and focus and get reinforced for making the choice to come here. And if they're unmotivated and shut down and worried, but they're showing it in a different way, then I need to help them build confidence, but get in a place where they have try, where they have a little heart, where they think, okay, I'll put a little effort into that. And I have to shape that. And so Minty, my horse, who, if you watch him now, well, he's ancient now, so it's not the same, but if you watched him, as of a couple years old, through, most of his life, you would never know that he was a quitter. He was one of the worst horses I ever worked because he quit at everything. He just quit, 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 quit. The horse next to us, who I was not training, he was one of the very first horses I worked. And he would walk away from target training, which was simple. And the horse next to him, who I wasn't working, is reaching over the fence like, I'll touch it. So I had in him a horse who just saw no desire to put any effort forth. I don't know what his experience was before that, because he was only a yearling, and he had come though from a thoroughbred sale. So he never raced, but he came through a traditional handling, but he didn't have a ton of it, I mean, he's only a yearling, but clearly there could be some genetic component to it, but I imagine there was also, he's sensitive, and it probably had a bigger impact on him than maybe it did in some other horses. So you don't know what you've got. That's the thing with horses. I don't know why you're doing what you're doing and where this comes from, but I do know what I want to see different, how I can help you to be a better part of this world. How can I help you to function better in this human-centric world that we chose for you? And so so that's kind of where we go with that. So as I got set out to do things, I saw people just going, yes, I just need this trained and this trained and this trained. And what I started seeing, that the biggest, the most important, the most profound part of this training changed the horse's perception of the world. It changed their experiences. It changed their human or their emotional component. It helped them to have a deeper relationship with people. And you know what? All of that is basically classic conditioning, I think. And operant conditioning is a part of it. So let's tell another story. So that's where I started seeing it, and I realized this a means to an end is the smallest part of it. Getting him to do a better canter depart or collecting or jumping the jump, that's great. But really, in order to get there, I want a horse who is calm and relaxed and doing it in a way that looks thoughtful and deliberate, and it's a choice they're making to do it without, compulsion behind it. So to get to that place, I need to establish a really strong relationship with their person, my person, people in general. And so that part is really where the classic conditioning is what makes them that ideal learner that goes right into that place. That's what I see it as anyway. So I always have said classic conditioning is really, really important, and it's going on all the time. And in the beginning, what people tend to think of, they think of the clicker. So now I'm going to condition the clicker. So they click, they feed, they click, they feed, they click, they feed. There is operant conditioning in there. And I teach people from the get-go, I want that horse to keep his head to himself in order to get reinforced. Because if whatever the horse is doing, something is going to get reinforced. So if he's coming at me and trying to eat the food and I just keep feeding it, I'm going to make a bigger challenge for myself and set the horse up for more frustration later. So what I want to do right off the bat, there is operant learning. I think they do not stop with the operant learning. They're busy thinking, how do I get what I need out of this world? How do I get what I want out of this world? How do I avoid the things I don't want in this world? So the operant training, the operant conditioning is going on all the time with the animals. And I don't think that stops. But yet the classic conditioning never stops either. So in the beginning, you say, okay, I want you to touch the target. And they go, okay. And they get they may look at it and you take that. And then they reach a little bit and you take that. And they finally kind of start touching it and you bridge that. And then you're moving it around and they're following it. And the criteria is built. The behavior gets stronger and more complicated. Not complicated per se, but, becomes the criteria shifts to it's more effort on the animal's part, and you're seeing the commitment, you're seeing that they like it, that they choose it, they comprehend it, they know what this exercise entails. And so that part moves along. So pretty soon, now maybe we've moved on to the stationary target. And now what we're maybe doing is working on, something else. We faded the target from this behavior. But what we've done in the process, that whole thing, a constant component in there has been the target, and the target equals food, and the target equals food, and the target equals food, and touching the target equals food, and touching the target and following the target equals food till the target is classically conditioned. So we didn't set out to classically condition, we just used it in a thoughtful way. I mean, people don't think, oh, I'm going to classically condition the target. I want them to think like that, because I really want most all of their behaviors become classically conditioned. When they are offering them and they want to do them and they choose to do them, they do them brightly and eagerly and engaged, and in tough situations, like, I'm going to go do that. I know now that it has a history that it says this is going to get reinforced, and that classic conditioning is part of what builds that reinforcement history. It builds that association. So and I don't know where everybody would stand on this, but this is how I really see it. So the classic conditioning goes on all the time. It never stops. So as we get them touching the target, pretty soon the target is a good thing for them. And it becomes classically conditioned. They just see the target, think, oh, the target.